Hello everybody, I hope you're having a good day today. We're going to have another lesson here. Hope the weather's cooperating where you are. It's kind of nice here. A little on the cool side, but nothing like what some of you are having. Some of you are having snow, so anyway, that doesn't happen here where I am. But anyway, the lesson today is about DNA versus evolution. And for over 150 years, the theory of evolution has basically been taught as fact. In fact, if you're going to argue, no, God created this earth, you probably get an F in your class if you bring that up to the teacher. And so the majority of those who teach this evolution as fact have been people who do not believe in the God of the Bible. See, they have criticized the creation account, but as of yet, they've been unable to disprove it. In fact, they haven't even been able to prove the theory of evolution yet. And that's why it's called a theory, because there's no scientific fact to back it up. And so a lot of the data they use, they kind of have to skew it a little bit to make it come close to supporting their theory. And there's things all the time coming up that kind of put their theory kind of on the back burner and keep it pushed down by other things. And so for years they taught that the human came from monkeys. The human descended from monkeys. And that is why because there's major similarities in both species. I mean, they can walk upright, and they have arms, they have the opposable thumbs, and so they think, well, that's the closest thing, so we must have descended from monkeys. But see, if evolution is an ongoing process, how come there's no in-betweens? How come there's none of those missing links? You've seen the pictures in the science books. They start off with some monkey, then they have a larger creature, then a larger creature, then a Cro-Magnon, and all these other things. How come there's none of those walking around today? They're not there. And so if you want to get technical, we're going to be talking about DNA. And the human DNA is nothing close to what a monkey is. A human DNA, if you want to be honest, is closer to a pig than a monkey. And of course, that might explain a lot of things. But anyway, let's keep going with our lesson. See, there's many questions that plague the evolutionary theory. And it's to the point now that they just cannot explain some of these problems that's there. It's in many cases their theory is really backward according to logic, and so the reality makes several suggestions that they cannot explain, and so these problems cause them to question their own theory. And while they recognize their problems, they are not willing to accept the creation account. See, they will accept any theory offered, no matter how ridiculous it may seem, but they will not accept the account that teaches there is a God. So, I mean, that's just the way it is, folks, and that's why they will not do that, and that's why they keep promoting this theory. And those that do teach there is a God, they're trying to ridicule them and make them seem like fools. So, in the last 50 years, a lot has been learned about DNA. And as we understand it, DNA is the building block of life. In fact, every living thing, whether it be plant or animal or human, has its own specific DNA. This DNA is unique to itself and unique to that individual. And of the now nearly 8 billion people on this earth, no two have the same DNA. Now, there's a couple exceptions here we have to note. When doctors have transplanted organs into others, the DNA of the organ remains identified with the original body, while the recipient in the rest of the body maintains its own DNA. And then there have been a few documented cases of twins sharing the same identical DNA, but that is extremely rare. So we have to make that acknowledgement that everything is unique. Now, think about this. When the process of procreation takes place and the egg is fertilized in the female, the embryo or fetus already has its own DNA, which is unique and different from the body of the host mother. And this should tell us that the child in the body is no longer the mother's body to decide what to do with this living being. I mean, it is its own individual, and it has its own DNA. And so abortion is murder any way you look at it. I mean, that's what it is. All right, scientists and those trained in reading DNA can take such DNA and determine a whole story from it. I mean, they can find the smallest cell, get the DNA out of it, and tell you exactly where it is. I mean, if they're checking out maybe plant DNA, they can tell you from what region of the world the plant comes from, what kind of plant it is. I mean, they have different varieties of plants, and they can identify everything. And I mean, they could take a tomato and run its DNA, and they could probably tell you pretty much where that tomato came from, what field it came from, and sometimes even down to the plant if they went that far. You know, how did they find out about the mad cow disease? They traced it and through its DNA and knew exactly where it came from. And so, yeah, things like that. So they can take this, and there's a whole story about DNA in every strand from every creature on this earth and every plant. So every cell in the body has the same DNA. So if you take, it doesn't matter if it comes from an eyelash or the blood or the waste from the digestive tract or spit. I mean, the human DNA is always unique to that individual. And we know the evidence of DNA has been used for years in identifying people who have committed crimes, and it has been proven reliable in paternity cases. Now, recently, we've seen these web-based programs which help people with their family trees have been allowing people to send a sample of their DNA. There's 4 or 5 companies that do this. And the report informs them of their ancestry, and what they have to try and do is basically be very accurate. Otherwise, guess what? Oriental people will be told their ancestry is Nordic in origin. I mean, that'd be kind of surprising. And you take someone from Sweden, say their origin was down in Africa. I mean, a little bit of logic has to come in here as well. And we have to be aware that if you do this through 2 different companies, you'll get 2 different results. I mean, it's not a determined science. It's probably just a lot of guesswork. But, I mean, DNA does say something. It tells you your gender. It tells you possibly what your race is and what kind of hair color you have and stuff like that. So we've heard stories of close relatives doing the DNA test and getting different results. And what this tells us is that some of this is nothing more than a guessing game for some of these programs. So you can do that if you're curious, maybe if you want to just see what it says, but it may not be accurate. And so we realize that. Now, those of us who believe in the Bible understand that through Adam and Noah, all mankind has come into existence. From those 2, all the various races and variations have come into existence. And while there are Negroid and Caucasian and Mongoloid variations, they are still human. And there's no variation exists whereby one can be considered anything but human. And so, depending on blood type, all can share the same blood. I mean, a person with AB positive can share their blood with any other race that is AB positive, as long as it's human. You try and put blood into another animal, it's going to react and probably kill it. And if you took the blood from some other creature, it would probably kill you. And you'd definitely be in danger if someone shared their blood with you and that was a different blood type. It does produce problems and can even kill. So, blood type, that's one way of looking at it. But we're all human beings. And we have to recognize that. That's hard for some people to accept. It really is, especially those people who have a racist background that think that other races don't have DNA or anything, that they're not human. So that's real sad when that happens. It really is. Now, in Genesis chapter 1, we have the creation account. See, God was very specific to declare that He created life, that every living thing would reproduce after its kind. All right, we can understand that. I mean, we see that all the time, and that has not changed over these 4,000 to 6,000 years. I mean, it has not changed. See, a dog still produces dogs, cats reproduce cats, and humans reproduce humans. And it would take an example of a seed of corn to produce tomatoes to reflect the teaching of evolution. And so far, even with the hybrid breeding, no plant has been able to produce anything other than its own kind. But do not think that the scientists are still trying to get plants to produce something else to prove their theory. Yeah, they can get plants to have the flavor of something else. I mean, they have new, now the honey crisp apples, which gives you a hint of honey as they have developed the hybrid. But guess what? You take that seed out of that honey crisp, and what's going to grow? Well, you're going to have an apple tree that produces honey crisp apples. I mean, that's common sense. We know that. And they're still trying to find an apple that when you plant it, it'll produce a pear. And they have tried everything they can, and when they kind of inject DNA into a seed, it basically destroys it, and chances are it's not going to grow unless, if a pear grows up, then it's going to produce a pear tree. I mean, that's all it is. So let's keep that in mind. And yes, some of these plants are very similar. Most of the citrus plants, they can graft things on there, and yes, that particular branch would produce maybe lemons, while another branch might produce oranges. I mean, they can do that. So you wonder how they do this. Well, it's not anything that's natural. It's not anything that's natural. So what this teaches us is certainly certain to say that DNA has produced a major problem with the theory of evolution. It is a problem even to the extent that many who once taught evolution have accepted the intelligent design concept. Yet they still refuse to acknowledge the God of the Bible. A few of them have recognized that, and they have accepted that, and yes, they become Bible believers. They believe in God, even though they're still scientists. And there are quite a few who have done that as well. See, one of the main reasons they refuse to accept the God of the Bible is because they do not want to be held accountable for their actions. You know, in Ecclesiastes 12, 13, and 14, it says, God has told us to fear Him and keep His commandments because that is the whole duty of man. And so most people want to be independent of God and live their life the way they want to live. And that hasn't changed in all these years. They're going to do what they want to do. They do not want the restrictions that God places on them, and they don't want the laws of God to keep them from having their desires fulfilled. And the more people struggle to eliminate God, the more evident it becomes that God is needed in every facet of our lives. So we can say thank God for DNA. And really, when you think about it, this shows God's handiwork in all of life, everything. I mean, it's such a compelling evidence that God is involved in all of this, and God created all of this and made it this way. And slowly, science is confirming, and it always will. As long as scientists are out there trying to figure things out, they're going to realize God is the reason behind all of life. So think about those things. All right. This might be a good message to send to your scientific friends. Share this message with others, and they certainly need this, and they really need to consider it, because the evidence against evolution is really DNA. and it kind of disproves the theory on its own. So consider that and do some study on it, and you can help maybe bring others away from that theory that we descended from monkeys and realize we came from God and no other source. So that's our lesson for today. Consider these thoughts, and Lord willing, we'll be back again tomorrow with another lesson. All right, bye bye for now.